Fire here, and this is day 4 of the vlog. Today, I think I'm gonna go over the snap action mechanic. So this is one of the things in the game, The Deep Between, this is all about. That is a little different, that is unique to the game, or at least, it's a mechanic that kind of gives the game its identity. So I'm going to kind of give a little rundown with some models on the board and show all that off. But the long and short of it is in the game, every game round, models will have 2 actions as well as a snap action. I'll kind of go into all the specifics of the snap action, but the general thing is you can use it to kind of push the turn further, sometimes at a penalty. You can use it to react, which is something that's kind of cool and keeps both players engaged, especially with it being alternating actions. The game is constantly bouncing back and forth. But it doesn't get too bogged down because there's only the one snap action, and you can only do one per action that your opponent's taking. And then there is a phase at the end of the activation phase called the snap phase. So during that phase, it's almost like a continuation of the activation phase. Play passes back and forth between players, but for that final phase, you're just resolving any unused snap actions. So yeah, it's kind of a cool mechanic, and I'm gonna kind of show some examples of what it looks like on the board. Okay, so as I said before, we're gonna go through a few examples of different ways that the snap action can be used. Now that I think about it, I don't have any kind of designator on these models, so let's just do that real quick, just so we can kind of follow what's going on here. So we're just going to put some little aquarium gems or whatever you have on these guys real quick, just to show that they have a snap action. All right, so for example, let's just say it's this drone's turn here. He's got a short range hand belcher there, as does the grub. So it's only a 6-inch range. So I've already kind of laid these models out accordingly. So he's just out of range of these 2 models. So one of the things you can do with your snap action, you can use it during your activation. So he could do a snap move, which is a short move basically. It's like a half move, and that would use that snap action for that. And then he could then perform the attack. Additionally, he could do a normal move, which would move him 6, and he could get a little closer, whether he wanted to be in cover or whether he wanted to be wherever, 6-inch movement. And he can then perform an attack, and then he can then spend this to perform another attack, as he does have the core offense stat. So that's one thing about snap actions, is they're all attributed to one of the 3 core stats of the game that every model have, which is offense, defense, and utility. And the way that would work, for say like utility, which he does not have, but let's just say that this fella here had, and he was moving up the board from a long distance. Let's say he like double moved or ran up to this terminal. If you have the utility as your core stat for snap actions, he could then interact with it. Something that, let's say, this grub that also ran up the board and doesn't have one could not do. So it's a way to differentiate models between what they can do on their turn, which is kind of like a way to push the limit, or to like kind of do these almost like power plays that make each piece feel somewhat unique. And then that's offense and offense and utility. Defense is a little different. So the way defense works is you basically get an additional bonus to your next defense roll, which kind of doesn't sound like a lot compared to some of the other mechanics there, but it does make a really big difference over the course of a game, and can be the difference in a model just taking a significant higher amount of damage. If you think about taking a 5+ roll to a 4+ roll, it's a pretty big advantage. So that's the way models use it on their turn. In addition, back to the example where, let's say this drone was over here. Let's say it's his turn and he uses a normal attack, and he just shoots at this warden up here, this vase warden. After an attack is resolved, you can, or after any action really is resolved, you can use a snap action to react. You can only do one reaction to an action. So for example, let's say he moved up and shot at him. He could then use a reaction to drop down, right? To hide out of line of sight now. Because now there's not a clear line of sight between the center of his base and the center of his base without this piece of intervening terrain, which is size 2. It's essentially as big as he is, right? We'll do terrain sizes and all that in another video. But another thing you could do is, let's say that these two are up here kind of fighting, and it's his turn. He does his attacks, yada yada, and he could then return an attack with a snap attack if he has that core stat. Additionally, something that can happen is, let's say the two of these are up here together, and it's his activation. He decides, I'm actually going to leave combat with this guy, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to try to fight this drone instead of the grub. When that happens, it presents the model, the player, with the opportunity to do basically like an opportunity attack. And that gives them an advantage as well as performing an attack. So that's another way that snap action can be used. And then the last way that snap actions can be used, other than pushing the limits of a turn or reacting, is the game has several phases. So there's a beginning of round phase. There is the activation phase, where players take turn activating models back and forth. And then there's a snap phase. And then finally an end of round phase. So the snap phase actually works, it's almost like a continuation of the activation phase, with the difference being everybody's already gone and all you're doing is trading snap actions. So let's say that was a scenario where these models have all activated and we go to the snap action phase, or the snap phase. So this model could maybe shoot this guy. After that's resolved, he could snap move. This guy could, attack him, and so on and so forth. He could interact, whatever, kind of following the same rules of, if you want to attack with a snap action, you have to have that core offense for snaps. The same with defense for the defensive advantage, and the same for utility for interacting and things like that. So it's kind of a system, I think, that gives the game a lot of flexibility. It makes for some really cool and unique gameplay mechanics where, like, say like this guy here, he could move, perform a snap, he could move, perform a snapshot, move again, and that's like a really powerful way to utilize over a turn. You cannot use heavy weapons with snap actions. Just they're too big and cumbersome. Medium weapons do receive an advantage penalty, which kind of helps your opponent out. And then the light weapons, they have no penalty. So there's an advantage to certain things like, you know, kind of swords and daggers and pistols and small arms. While the damage output isn't as high, sometimes it actually is still fairly consistent and can keep up with slightly heavier hitting weapons, just because you're more likely to hit, you're more reliable, and it's going to be more likely to crit as well. So that's something that's really cool. And then it also opens up these dynamic, you know, kind of opportunities where a model can, you know, rapidly move up the board. You can disrupt your opponent, you know, so you can move out of line of sight, like the example I gave earlier. So they can't just double tap a model, things like that, you know, and just pick on somebody. You can kind of, and you have to think ahead, because as activations go back and forth, one of the things is, you know, because there's that snap phase, you also have to think about, okay, well, I have to burn my snap actions as well, because if I want to be the first one to get the jump on my opponent at the beginning of the next round, that means they have to be the last one to activate. So you can't just rely on simple model count to say, well, I have less models, therefore, you know, I'm going to get to go first. You know, your opponent may be in a scenario where they spend, you know, their snap actions, and let's say that, you know, this was a scenario where it was maybe, you know, only the one interacts against these two models, but during their activation, you know, they use their snap actions. So come the snap phase, he still had a snap action, he has to use it, and then it's a scenario where even though your opponent has less models, they might lose kind of priority or not have an advantage going into a next round. So it's another way to kind of add, just ways to add depth and layer to the game without it being too much rule stacking. And this rule is unique and special, and this one rule is special, and this one. They're kind of universal things that everybody's going to share, and it's just who can use those things better that comes out ahead. So yeah, that's kind of a quick crash course on how snap actions work, and hopefully you guys stick around and follow and like and share and subscribe and all that stuff. And then one last thing, all of this terrain here that you see, I 3D printed, but they are from Saucerman Studios. We don't have a partnership or anything like that, but they did tell me that, you know, as long as I give them a shout out and I, you know, kind of point out that it is their terrain, I can use them in my videos and for any kind of content. So that's kind of a way to give back to another creator in the 3D printing space in the community. And it was really cool of them to kind of help out with me with that, because, you know, you could really use anything. You know, I could just use objects around the house as terrain, or I could use terrain from other companies. But, you know, when you want it to be the look and the feel of a universe you're building, it's really good to be able to have terrain that is exactly that. And Saucerman Studios is great. They actually have, you know, the whole run of different terrain types. They have, you know, stuff for like Trench Crusade, kind of Grimdark stuff. I mean, you name it. So just pointing that out, and yeah, look forward to showing you guys more in the next video.